Hey everyone, thanks for listening to another episode of Human Element. Today I'm speaking with Michael Freeman, Head of Threat Intelligence at Armis. Michael, thanks for joining me today. Would you start off by sharing a bit about your journey so far?
Yeah, thank you for having me. My journey is not the typical journey that a lot of people would take. I started out as a cryptanalyst, found out I wasn't, a math genius, but I was really good at breaking the implementation of cryptography, which led me to, finding vulnerabilities within software, joined up with a 2600 group way back in the days. That led to capture the flag winning at DEFCON a couple times and, a lot of government work, think tank work, and eventually got drawn out of that into, the Fortune 500 world. That was a lot of fun for a bit. And then I decided I want to go down the road and started up a company, which got acquired last year by Armis.
Sounds like a wild ride.
It is.
So tell me about some of the key life events that have shaped your leadership style.
So leadership style has changed quite a bit, and it's based upon a lot of things I learned from people I greatly respect and watch what they do very closely. It's a lot about understanding the human element as well as the financial element and behind the scenes of things. As I started raising the ranks within management, it was at first finding the right people for the right jobs to implement things, learning to let go of a lot of the hands-on keyboard aspect of things, learning to identify who is motivated and really driven to step up. Maybe their skills aren't exactly to where I would need them to be, but they're driven to the point and willing to learn it. I'm willing to take that chance and give them that opportunity. To understanding what it took to, understand the financial plan, understand what the businesses needs, and, how to manage that within the processes of what I was building, to eventually understand what it took to actually build leaders and understanding, looking for leadership qualities in people when they may not realize they have it in themselves, and helping to bring it out within people, primarily through showing them through my own actions and help them find situations where I can put them in that would help them understand that they do have some of those qualities themselves and nurture and grow in that. So it's been a unique process that I've had a lot of people I can learn from. I've had some great leaders, both in the think tank world, the government side, as well as, over at Nike when I was there. I had some great leaders there. I got some great leaders with Armis. And so just learning, identifying what works for me and what works for my people.
Sounds good. How do you identify kind of what are the latent traits you're looking for in, people who you think might make good managers?
People who care about other people is one of the biggest things I look for. Also, people who understand that, sometimes it's either they're willing to get away from the keyboard, they're wanting to grow more, and they're in an aspect of what they want to do, and looking for that, growth opportunity. As well as people that, realize they want to get into the industry, and you talk to them and you understand, maybe they're really good at seeing things in a different light, understanding and asking different questions versus what an implementer would do, or someone who's very close to the keyboard, who loves to dig in and look at assembly code all day, versus someone who can look at that and go, okay, what does that mean? What does that mean to the business? And as they start asking those questions themselves, I realize that people who ask different types of questions, that leads me to understand the way they're thinking and can help lead them into different types of leadership roles based upon the types of questions they're asking themselves, asking me.
Excellent. What non-technical skills have had the most impact on your career?
Asking different questions and viewing things in a different light. A lot of what ifs. Whenever I'm presented with some form of a challenge, I dig a lot of what ifs. Why are we doing this? What the outcome is specifically looking for. Understanding that people really, when they come across their work, they kind of are not always the same people they are at home or with other life circumstances they're dealing with. And so understanding what really drives people helps me understand why we're pushing for certain things within an environment. So whenever I hear, hey, we need this product or we need this solution, a lot of people goes, okay, let's go through this process. Let's figure out technical due diligence, figure out, the cost of it. My first question is, why do we need it? What's the outcomes we need and what's being measured from that? So that's what helped me really push myself into more of a leadership role of understanding that aspect of things. It helps me identify, especially from a fiscal standpoint, why are we pushing for certain things versus other things? That's helped me extensively. There's been times I've, had initiatives where senior leadership is pushing for a certain type of a technology, and I look at it and said, well, what are we pushing this for? And I said, give it a great example is at a company who's doing work for a government agency, and they need a specific type of a solution, and they weren't very clear on it, but they were looking at a $20 million solution. Once I understood what the true need was, I found a solution that cost us $25K a year instead of, millions of dollars.
Yeah, nice. So tell me about a mistake that led you to significant personal growth.
Where to start? I would say interesting. Early in my career, when we were building a team for DEFCON CTF, everybody on my team is very focused on kernel hacking, finding vulnerabilities within, OpenBSD, trying to find remote code execution, things like that. And we had a couple of people approach us wanting to be on our team, and they were doing web app hacking. And to be honest, at the time, this is not really a thing. Everybody, this is when the industry has moved from, hey, we're doing firewalls to now let's hack into Linux and BSD kernel and stuff like that. Yeah, we're still running Windows 2000s at this time. So when they're talking about web app hacking, we were just like, I'm not certain about this. But we took a vote, and I was one of the people like, I don't really think this is going to be working. I didn't want them on our team. Not great people, actually. I'm still friends with all of them now. And happy we did, because they came on, and, some of the challenges we were presented were some web applications that we were like, we have no clue what we're doing. And, they saved the day. So that was a learning experience to open up and listen to people, and sometimes asking better questions. That helped me ask better questions because, after one of the nights, when they really shined, we went out to dinner, and I started asking questions like, well, how did you know about this thing called a SQL injection? What does it do? And the more I started understanding things that way, I'm like, I was very closed-minded to any other possibilities, and so that helped a big time.
Nice. I definitely remember that shift from the only thing I'm worried about is the kernel and old school applications, and none of this other fuzzy frilly junk matters, to
exactly.
Oh yeah, SQL's an issue, and yeah. So you mean hard-coded passwords in the HTML in the comments there isn't a great idea?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So is there an individual who altered the trajectory of your career?
That would be my dad. He was U.S. Special Operations, and that was the career I was going to go into. Growing up, that's pretty much all I knew. That's what I was getting ready for my entire childhood. There was a lot of times I had opportunities to play with encrypted comms and play with computers and mainframes that nobody would have had access to, and I started really liking that aspect of things, but that was the road I was going. And he was deployed overseas for quite a while for an agency he was working with, and came back right before I was about to, I just turned 17. Like, okay, Dad, I need you to sign paperwork. I'm going to the Army. We're going to do a fast track to Special Forces. And he didn't say no. He still encouraged me on it, but he definitely pointed out, I'm talking to some of the people on our unit, and they noticed that you were playing around with some things that showed some aptitude or a technical aspect of things. And in my mind, I'm like, I don't really want to go to become an electrical engineer, because that was really the only option I knew about. And he guided me and let me know, well, you can go into the intelligence field. There's opportunities there that you don't know exist. And so he opened up my mind and doors on that aspect of things that, I'm glad he did.
So what is the most valuable lesson you've learned from a security incident or an operational failure?
The biggest one I would say is security still doesn't understand the business. That's the biggest one. Mm-hmm. I handled a major incident where at the time we had intel showing that something could potentially be an issue, but it was a lack of understanding in the business context that was the failure on our side. Once we were really deep into the incident, that we realized actually we had the intel from day one, but we just didn't know this was important to the business. We thought it was business as usual, but understanding the business, we failed at that, which it wouldn't have stopped the breach, but we would have caught it much sooner. That was still today, I think, especially on the threat intel side of things, the lack of understanding of the business is a major problem that we're all still facing. And the the groups and the security operations that I see that are, it doesn't matter how mature you are, whether or not you got all the tools in place and you're collecting them and analyzing on things. If you understand the business, those are the ones I find is most successful. If you understand the context of every, all the systems you're supposed to be watching and monitoring and alerting for, if you understand that, you're going to be in a much better position than everybody who has $200 million with the tools in place, logging every single thing that they can and using whatever AI thing that they think they can use. So understanding the business context has been a failure in the past, but it's one I push to try to rectify now. And everybody I talk to, whether they're just starting out in the industry or, have been in it for a very long time and trying to figure out what to do next, that's the key driver right there.
All right. What would you say is the most rewarding aspect of your job today?
So getting acquired by Armis has opened up a lot of unique opportunities. One of the things that we have is a unique structure that integrates certain key components of myself that I really like. I love the entrepreneur side of things, where I can identify opportunities within the business and grow it. I also still love to do advanced research stuff. It's, doing very cutting edge technologies is what I would love to do, and identifying opportunities for individuals to grow too. So this is giving me the opportunity to deal with all three of them at the same time, where we can look and go, we have an immense amount of data that nobody else really has in their industry. We have a really great go-to-marketing engine and opportunities where I can look at and say, who internally can I help push them and drive them to new opportunities and new growth that they're looking for, and look at it and say, you know what? Looking through the data, analyzing this, here's some things our industry doesn't know about when it comes to, new tool sets we can build or new analytics we can provide. Mm-hmm. What would it take to do that? And so that is, I'm very happy with what we're doing right now, and the opportunity to look at things and say, here's some gaps that we have as an industry. Let's fill those gaps. We've got the data, we've got the tools and the capability. So let's just run and deal with it.
So how has your approach to building trust within your teams evolved over time?
Used to be honest, it changed for me. I went to go work with a think tank that had 72 PhDs at it, and I was the only one that didn't have one. And walked in the door going, I'm definitely not the smartest person here. So listening was one of the biggest aspects of what I applied. Asking interesting questions and learning what the people are doing, understanding the human element and understanding what their core motivations are, what drives them, what they're really into, helped me identify ways that I can help them in ways that they didn't understand. So we had one time where we were doing a project for the NSA where I was sitting outside in this area, surrounded by other different skiffs, and they were just in and out nonstop with meetings. Finally, people I've built some relationships with, some trust with, by looking at some things for them and not judging the work or anything else like that, and saying here's some insights I think might be helpful too, because I think approaching people from a view of I'm better than you, or I might know more than you, or I'm smartest guy in the room, but more of a humble approach and saying, I noticed this is a little bit off here. Is there a reason that I'm not seeing? Helped me out, because showing that curiosity, especially with those type of people, really opened up the doors. And then he finally on one day came out and said, hey, we need you to take a look at something. And to be honest, they had these massive teams in there for over a week with a very hard problem. I looked at it and go, why don't we just try this one little thing here? And then everybody's just like, yeah, why weren't you in here on Monday? You could save us all this time. So, that helped. But I think, having a bit of a name carries you a bit, but also treating people as humans is the key thing, not letting politics get in the way, not letting, religion or anything else like that get in the way, just understanding who people really are, taking the time to get to know people, figuring out who they really are helps me identify. And I don't do it as hey, I'm trying to get a means done. And I'm genuinely interested in who you are. Are you open to debate about things? When we were getting acquired, we went to Israel, and I would say out of everybody there, a lot of the times we were arguing about food, which food's best, which, is the best. There was sometimes we were like, okay, why did you engineer it this way? And then you had to be open to, maybe this guy knows a lot more about, architectural work than I do, and just listen to him and listen to the questions. And that helped also.
So what's your strategy for balancing the need for technical expertise with the leadership skills that you need to be effective?
The way I approach very deep technical work right now, especially with my team, is I will identify a potential solution or problem. And so trying to figure it out myself, I'll come up with, hey, here's the end result of what I'm trying to achieve. And I'll give you an example. We have the ability to query a lot of unique data sets now. And I wanted to know, is there any type of technologies that a lot of our customers use that are OT, IoT, or medical related that have a lot of vulnerabilities that are not published with CVEs? There's no real 0 days published about them, anything like that. We can find vulnerabilities in them with some of the capabilities we're building now. So instead of me getting on my hands on the keyboard, trying to do all the work myself, which couldn't take that much time, and using some of my tools to go through and find these vulnerabilities, I said, what's my end result? And we're going to publish these CVEs. So I do the first 5 to 10% myself, typically about 10%. Say, here's what I want. Here's the steps we're going to start with, not the whole process.
Yeah.
Then I hand it over to my team and said, go deal with it. And when you get to this point, whether you need me to help validate some of these vulnerabilities or whatever the case may be, let me know. I'll double check the work. But as we get towards the end of it, these great technical people, let me take over this part. I'll work with our marketing team, make it look good, things like that. So I follow a process of like 80-20. I do 20% of the work, the first 10 at the beginning, let my team do the 80%, the best they know how to do it. And sometimes they come up with ways wow, that was actually amazing. I didn't think about that. And then I come in and add my face and touch into that at 10%. So that's the way I approach it.
All right, so I'm going to ask you something timely. There are a bunch of notifications going around right now that MITRE, the contract vehicle that drives CVE, is expiring and may not get renewed. What feelings does that raise for you?
It's an interesting question. At the very beginning, when it first started, it was a much needed process, to be honest. Yep. It really was. We needed it bad. I think things have evolved greatly since then. A lot of trust amongst researchers has grown. Mm-hmm. Back then, we were all like, we're going by aliases. We didn't know who's who. And type of day, didn't work for who, and didn't trust each other, basically. Now, the community has grown. We have much more trust with each other. We share information amongst the companies even. Hey, if I see something that's really important, I'll reach out to somebody, a researcher for a different company. Hey, you seen this too? This is kind of odd. So that is built there. I think the way I kind of look at it is it was a castle built on sand, and it's crumbling under its own weight. Mm-hmm. Now, looking at the MITRE aspect of things, there were some questions raised by me. And why was the contract by the DHS actually expired last year? For one, that's a question raised.
Yeah,
I know a lot of people at MITRE. They are brilliant technical people, and there's some very, very smart politicians that work there. And so I also have to look at what political play it is, because you look at the meeting notes from last month within the CVE organization, the group, there was no mention of this. Why was it not talked about back then, last month? So I have to look at it, all angles of it, not just the sky's falling approach. Because the sky falling approach, I'm looking at, we got a lot of smart people in the industry that take initiative, and I've already started to see things already starting to evolve already, saying, hey, let's get a group together. We're all researchers from different companies, and we might be competitors in one space, but let's solve this problem ourselves. This is not, undoable. Mm-hmm. Michael, you got some AI stuff that can help us with enrichment of the data. We got this that can help us with this. So I started to see very quickly the evolution of something that could come out of it, and I think it still could. CISA did come up this morning and say we're going to backfill it for the funding for another, I think, 2 years, if I'm not mistaken, for MITRE. So, that's where I think the politics and the politicians came into play within MITRE to right time, right place to maybe secure additional funding. I'm not sure why they were doing it, but there were just enough information, things that happened. I think I've seen this before doing some government work in the past. I think I know what's about to happen. And I told my marketing team that last night, don't publish anything that's going to scare people. Things might happen. Just wait and see. And
more often than not, that's the right approach.
Yeah.
How do you stay ahead of emerging threats while managing your day-to-day operations?
So one of the products I developed, so when I left the think tank world and I went to work for Nike, I looked at some of the problems we had. There was I wasn't brought in for the threat intel team, to be honest. I had no desire to go over there, but a good friend of mine, she was on that team. She's a former CIA. She definitely used every trick in the book to try to get me up over on that team. So that's where to put it. I started looking at every intel feed we were buying, and we had a lot of false positives, 900 to 1 false positive rate. All of it was really after the fact. First, he writes amazing reports, but that's 3 months after it's already happened.
Right.
Other people wrote reports, but you're looking at a bunch of assembly dumps, from Hydra or whatever the case may be. And you're like, yeah, what's actionable for this for me? Take pictures of the IOC, so you're trying to OCR and things like that in bulk, so you can get everything. Another problem we had is our vulnerability management team had a huge problem. Like, how do you prioritize this? EPSS was starting to come out, and I go, well, that's about as accurate as a flip of a coin. Takes no context around awareness of the environment. In addition, it's right and boom concept. It's still after the fact. So I developed 3 unique technologies that I've done work with in the past with think tanks. And they said, look, let me use these technologies to help solve 2 of these problems here. One was prioritization based upon what the bad guys are actually doing. What vulnerabilities are they really truly exploiting in the wild? So I was doing this about 3 years before DEFCON CTF even came out. So that helped with prioritization component of it. Also taking that information also and applying to TTPs helped my SOC team understand what TTPs are evolving are starting to come out, that you can get detections in place that our typical vendors couldn't come up with in time. So that helped us greatly. So applying that same concept, those tool sets, I started my company with. We were running SDC for about 4, almost 5 years before we got acquired, and I've evolved those greatly. So now we've been doing some extremely crazy stuff with agent-based AI, agentic regs, you name it. We've done some pretty amazing stuff in that area. That helps me pull some really unique aspects of the evolution of different types of technology. Gives me summaries by the day of areas that might be of interest for me, whether that be of interest for here's a new vulnerability to here is some new technology, a new white paper that's polished that fits into certain categories for me. So I've been, but lack of a better term, built a unique AI research assistant a couple years ago that's been involved since and helps me identify what's important to me to stay abreast of.
All right. Tell me about your definition of an effective team culture and how you build that into your teams.
My team culture is I like to bring on A-list people who are driven by, it doesn't matter what they're driven by. Some people are driven by money, so we'll definitely do that. Some, they want a unique title. No problem with that. But I'm results driven, and I want my team to be results driven. But I am also not pushing people in the culture to, I need A, B, C, and D done in this order. Here's my results. Within these parameters, here's the principles we live by, and let's go forth and let's solve it. It doesn't matter how we, start out with. If it's going to be what we start out with, it's going to be the same as what we end with. It doesn't matter. It just gets deliver results that matter to our customers is what I'm driven by. And that's the culture that I push. I'm driven by people who are very curious and that's important to me. My hiring process is kind of unique. When I'm hiring people, I have them send me a 3-minute video and I give them 5 questions. 3 of them are kind of technical in nature. 2 are about who they are as a person, personality, what they do, a personality type of a test. Then when I get them on a call for the first half of that call is, here's a real world problem I have. Sometimes it doesn't matter what it is. I just want to see how you think. And once I see how you think, whether or not you can solve it or not, I've had people that couldn't solve the problem, but I like the way they think. And if it's somebody that I'm like, yes, they took the time, they show me they can use some technology correctly with, the videos I have them put together. Mm-hmm. I love, I can understand who they are as a person, I like the way they think. Then I pitch the role to them and see once they understand what the role is, if they still want it, I hire them immediately. That's the way I do it. That approach helps me identify the right people to bring on my team.
Nice. How do you keep the human element in the center of your leadership approach?
That's a good question. It is hard sometimes because when you're looking at numbers all day, when you're looking at trends all day and technical aspects of things, it's hard to sometimes remember there's people behind the scenes making that happen. Especially in really remote organizations when you're, not face to face with people on a daily basis. You're seeing them on a Zoom flat screen. It's one of those situations where when I'm listening to people, hey, we're going through numbers on sales today. You listen to people and you start to focus on what I call the right questions. And it's like, I'm talking to her today and she sounded a little bit off. So let me send her a message, see if things are okay. Mm-hmm. So you always have to to me, especially the way I work, I have to remind myself to keep understanding who the humans are behind the scenes doing all this work with me. Check in on them on a constant basis, see how they're doing. It's not my deepest nature to say it's easy for me to connect with people and say, let's, always be best of friends right off the bat. It takes time. But once I start developing the relationships with people and working closer with them, it makes it much easier for me. But it's coming back down to the process of listening very closely to what people are saying and how they're saying it and their actions. So, sometimes you can pick up, hey, they're still delivering great work, but they seem to be slightly disconnected. What's going on? Is there something that's causing that for them? It's something at home, something at work, something I can help fix. Do they need a break or something to focus on something else? So I think listening is the biggest aspect of things, and active listening, which takes a lot of work. You asked me how I focus on the technical aspect of things while trying to do the leadership. I set up a lot of time throughout my week where I stop. I block out everything that I'm doing, and I need to focus on a few questions. What are the core questions I need to focus on? Sometimes it could be technical. Sometimes it's leadership. Sometimes it's people. I had, a deliverable for some, people on my team. Why did we miss that? Maybe it wasn't a technical problem. Maybe it was just, they were just flagging other things that I didn't know about. So I have to step back and ask myself those questions, give myself that time. Another thing I've found to help me manage that is not managing my time, but manage my energy. So it's in the past, it'd be really hard to context switch where I'm on one meeting where I'm doing sales for 2 to 3 meetings. Then I'm in 3 deep technical meetings, and the first 1 or 2, I'm like, wait, my mind is not there just yet. Let me figure this out before I can really engage with that. Next month, I'm trying to help write some marketing stuff, and it's like my mind is just not here. So what I do is I stagger my calendar based upon the types of meetings that they are. So, one day on a Wednesday in the morning, it's all going to be sales meetings or, accounting meetings. In the afternoon, it's all going to be podcast work. Tuesday morning, it's going to be all engineering work. And Wednesday, Thursday afternoon, it's all, analytical work that we're doing for different teams. So managing my energy was the most critical aspect of things. It helps me really then manage my time, which helps me focus on the people aspect of things much better.
So if you could go back in time and offer yourself 20 years ago one piece of advice, what would you say?
Make less stupid decisions. I've not been the type that said, okay, I'm going to wait for something to happen. I do analyze things and make decisions based upon that. But there has been a lot of times I've not really analyzed a situation and acted upon it, which was a stupid decision. Or I didn't know there was other opportunities that I could have pursued at that point. My very first startup, I actually sold to my employees. Fine exit, but there could have been a better option. At the time, I just didn't want to be in the business. I had other things going on. And that was the only thing I could see. So stepping away from the emotional aspect of things, think logically, probably would have made me more money at that point. But, I always view it as, don't regret things I've done as long as it didn't hurt anybody, but stop and think about the decisions you're making and why you're making them as lessons I've learned. And I would go back and tell myself, focus on making less stupid decisions.
Sounds good. How do you approach mentoring the next generation of security professionals?
If they're wanting to learn from the technical aspect of things, I kind of teach them the way I was taught and the way I learned. And a lot of people don't want to do that, but it also helps me identify who to focus on, even if they have a really good technical background on certain key areas. I'll start them out with assembly. Okay, let's learn some assembly. We're going to learn from the ground up why things do the way things they do. Once you understand that, I give them tasks and say, okay, read this book. Now we're going to discuss what we're on that book. Okay, now you understand assembly. Now let's learn about the Windows kernel a bit. Let's talk about, how the memory protection works. Let's try to look through this process. Cool. Now we're going to go to Linux. But I always try to break it down to the most core element for them. And one of the people I've met who is a big, I only met him briefly too, and it was his book that introduced me to it. And it's a book called The McCumber Cube. Almost nobody's ever heard of it in our industry. He was a brilliant scientist at the NSA. And essentially what it is if you really want to secure a system, you take a look at the data you're trying to secure. Look at it in those 3 elemental states. It's either going to be in processing, transmission, or storage. And then you take a look at the technologies, the people, and the process that's protecting it at each of those states. And then when you break that down into the core elements of it, it's, especially when I'm mentoring somebody, to really think things back down to that core element. Also, whenever I'm teaching people to look for vulnerabilities, I say the core element. Why are these there? Well, someone made an assumption. Someone blindly trusted the library they didn't know about, or someone was just in a rush job and didn't even think about it. When we're looking at vulnerabilities in a technology, if you got the same CWE type of vulnerabilities popping up consistently, why is that there? Think about that. Think about why those developers put that in there. They just not know that this was an actual bug that they're introducing. So that always helps. But it also pushes people too, because you have to think deeper on why you're learning the things that you're learning and what the outcomes are.
Tell me about a key piece of advice you give to young people in the space.
Why do you want to do it? That's what the biggest thing. A lot of people, I want the money, or I like breaking things. I'm like, well, great. You can go to a smash room and go break some glasses all day long, but is that really what you want to be doing? The other aspect of things is teaching younger people learn sales. It's important, whether or not you want to do it or not. I think that was one of the biggest issues I had. I didn't want to learn sales. I didn't want to learn how to sell. I prefer to be on the keyboard. That made more sense to me. So shifting away from learning, just purely hacking or whatever the case may be, that's what most people want to do is red teaming work, to learning the sales aspect of things, it opens up more doors for you long term than what you can imagine. So I've got a few people at Armis that I'm mentoring that are technical geniuses, but I said, go to the sales engineering role first. You're going to learn a lot about the people. You're going to learn about the business. You're going to learn not just our business, but the customer's business. You're going to learn about what their problems really, truly are and how you can actually truly solve them. Once you understand that, when you start learning more of the hacking aspect of things, you're going to see more things that you can break into than you could just by sitting and reading assembly or whatever the case may be all day. So, also, I've had people come back and tell me, I would have spent 2 weeks looking at this, 2 or 3 weeks looking at this bug, trying to exploit it, and taking what you stated, learning why was this bug introduced in the beginning, helped me step back away from it and go, actually, if I chain these other things together, I can leverage parts of this bug, but not the whole way I was doing it. And that saved me 3 weeks of doing it. That's generally the approach I take with people.
Okay. What's the hardest transition you faced moving up the ladder?
What gets you here won't get you next level. That's the hardest thing about it. That's the big key thing for me. Changing the way you think and changing what's important. Once you understand that you have to change the way you think, you have to change what's important to you, is the most important lesson you can learn.
That's a tough one. Do you see any trends developing that will require us to adjust how we lead our teams?
Culturally, yes, I do. I definitely, it's interesting right now because certain cultures, when I say cultures, I mean generational culture right now. Okay. It's not regional cultures. Some generational cultures, their view is, I don't want to learn new things. What I've been doing works. Others, their view is the bare minimum. I just want to do the bare minimum. And it's not everybody, but I definitely see the trend and certain cultures of aspects of things. I just get the bare minimum done and it's done. And then you're starting to see now a small subset of a younger generation now where it's going back to, I don't remember the German word for it, but basically it's adding and understanding a true element of your work to push yourself further and further on it. So I'm starting to see that starting to evolve a little bit more with the really young generation right now. Some of the newer people I've hired out of the university the past year or two, they're not content with just doing the bare minimum. They're not content with, hey, this is a really good exploit. I made it to land. Doesn't always work, but they're going to work on it until they get it to be an extremely reliable exploit.
Mhm.
And that's like, okay, great. How can I build some AI automation to help me augment some of this work on this side of things? So I am starting to see a little bit better shift on that. So I think it's a challenge for leadership and managers even to understand each of those variations of cultures within the different age ranges I'm seeing. So it's really hard to manage people who just want to do the bare minimum because it's not exactly the type of culture I would build. But the value they add at certain times is a mix. So you have to manage around that and understand, maybe that's just the way they are. Maybe it's important for them to, do only 20 hours this week because they want to check out and go whitewater rafting for a few weeks, and then they come back and add some great value to something. So it's adapting to that aspect of things. While others, it's 3:00 in the morning and they found a new bug they want to help exploit. I'm like, okay, well, I've got cold 2 hours. I can't help you with that one, but let's just jump up always. Try to help them.
So unfortunately, that's all the time we have for today. Before we wrap it up, if people want to follow along with your work, where's the best place to go?
Right now, go to armis.com/Armis Labs. We're publishing a lot of our research, and we've got a lot of new great AI research that we're putting together, a lot of new AI tools that we're going to be releasing. So that's going to be the best area right now.
Awesome. I've really enjoyed the conversation. Thanks for taking the time to talk to us, and talk to you soon.
Thank you.